My name is Alina. I am 24 years old. I used to think life was easy. I did not worry about anything. I had no job, no stress, no plan. My father was rich, so I lived like a queen. I woke up late every day. My breakfast was ready. My room was clean. I watched shows and scrolled on my phone for hours. If I wanted something, I bought it. If I wanted to go out, I went. My friend said, "Alina, you are so lucky." And yes, I was. My father gave me everything. I was his only daughter. My mother died when I was small. I do not remember her. My father worked all day, but he never said no to me. He bought me clothes, shoes, a red car, and even a gold watch. I had new phones and bags every few months. I never looked at prices. I only looked at what I liked. We lived in a big white house. There were 5 bedrooms. There was a swimming pool outside. There were people to clean, cook, and drive. I never washed a plate. I never opened the door myself. I just lived my life and spent money. I had many friends. We went to malls, cafes, and parties. We laughed, took pictures, and talked about holidays. I did not know anything about problems. I thought money would always be there. I thought life would always be fun. My father worked hard, but I did not know how hard. He left the house early and came back late. Sometimes he looked tired, but I did not ask why. I only smiled and said, "Good night, Daddy." I never asked how he felt. I never asked about his work. I never asked how he paid for everything. I did not care. I only cared about myself. But one night, everything changed. I came home late. It was a Friday night. My friends and I went out for dinner. We ate pizza and took photos. When I came home, the house was dark. That was strange. Usually the lights were on and the staff were working. I walked upstairs and checked my father's room. He was not there. I called his phone, but no answer. The next morning, I was sleeping when someone knocked on my door. It was the housekeeper. She looked worried. She said, "Alina, your father is in the hospital." My hands got cold. I asked, "What happened?" She said, "He felt pain and fell down. Someone called an ambulance. He is okay now, but you should go." We went to the hospital. My father was in bed. His eyes were closed. He looked tired and weak. I sat beside him. When he opened his eyes, he looked at me. He tried to smile. Then he said, "Alina, you must be strong now." Later, a doctor spoke to me. He said, "Your father has a heart problem. He cannot go to work. He must rest for a long time." I looked at the doctor. I did not know what to say. I had never seen my father like this. He always looked strong. Now he looked like a different man. 2 days later, a man came to the hospital. He was my father's lawyer. He gave me some papers. He said, "The business is finished. There is no more money." I was confused. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your father's company has many problems. It lost money. Now there is nothing left. You have to sell the house and everything else." I stood there, frozen. I did not believe him. I said, "This must be a mistake." But it was not a mistake. It was true. We had no money. We had to leave the house. 1 week later, I packed my clothes in bags. I walked into my room and looked around. The big mirror, the soft bed, the gold curtains. I touched the table one last time. Then I closed the door. We moved into a small flat. It had 2 small rooms. There was no sofa, just 2 chairs. There was a tiny kitchen. The paint on the wall was old. The floor was cold. It was not home, but it was all we had. My father stayed in bed most of the time. He was very tired. He looked weak. I made him tea and cooked eggs. I cleaned the flat. I washed clothes. I never did these things before. My hands hurt. My back felt sore. I was slow. But there was no one else to help. Our fridge was almost empty. I opened a drawer and saw one note. It was $20. That was all the money we had. I looked at my father. He was asleep. I sat at the table. I did not cry. I just sat there. I knew what I had to do. I put on clean clothes and left the flat. I walked to the city. I asked in shops, cafes, and stores. I said, "Do you need help?" Most people said no. Some said, "We only want people with experience." I felt small. I felt lost. But I kept going. Then I saw a small bakery on a quiet street. There was an old woman inside. She looked tired but kind. I asked, "Do you need help?" She looked at me and said, "Can you clean and pack bread?" I said, "Yes, I can learn." She looked at me again and said, "Come tomorrow." To 6 a.m, I walked home. My shoes were old. My feet hurt. But I had a job. It was a small job. It was not much. But it was mine. That night I told my father. He looked at me and said, "Good job." He smiled a little. I smiled too. It was not like before, but this smile felt real. The next morning, I woke up very early. The sky was still dark. I got ready and walked to the bakery. The woman gave me a white apron. She showed me how to clean tables and pack bread. She told me where to put things. She was not very friendly, but she was fair. I worked for 6 hours. I cleaned, packed, and swept the floor. My arms felt heavy. My back hurt. My hands were tired, but I did not stop. I wanted to earn money. I wanted to help my father. At the end of the day, the woman gave me a small paper bag. Inside it, there was a $10 note. I looked at it. My first money. It was small, but it was mine. I walked home slowly. My legs were tired, but my heart felt calm. I had done something with my own hands. At home, I gave my father tea. He asked, "How was your day?" I said, "Hard, but I did it." He looked at me for a moment. Then he said, "I'm proud of you." I felt warm inside. That night I sat near the window. The sky was dark. I looked up and whispered, "I will not give up." Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. I woke up at 5 a.m. My body felt heavy. My eyes did not want to open. I was not used to this. Before, I slept late. Now, I had to be up before the sun. I washed my face and tied my hair. I put on the same clothes as yesterday. I had no time or money for new ones. The street was quiet. I walked to the bakery. The air was cold. My hands were cold too. I walked faster. The woman was already there. She opened the door. She said, "You are late." I looked at the clock. It was only 2 minutes, but she was strict. I said, "I'm sorry." She pointed to the broom. I started to sweep the floor. I cleaned the tables, packed bread, and washed trays. I worked for hours. I made many small mistakes. I put the wrong bread in the wrong bag. I dropped a tray. I forgot to close a box. The woman got angry. She said, "You must think. Use your eyes. Use your hands. Be fast." I felt bad, but I said nothing. I just worked. At noon, I sat outside for a short break. I opened my small lunch. Just rice and 1 egg. I saw other people walk past in nice clothes. I remembered my old life. I remembered cafes and cold drinks. Now I had dust on my shoes and sore arms. I wanted to cry, but I did not. I ate fast and went back inside. The day was long. My feet hurt. My back hurt. But I finished my work. The woman gave me a small note. $10 again. I walked home slowly. My legs felt like stone. When I opened the door, my father looked up from the sofa. I smiled. He smiled back. That was enough for me. I worked at the bakery every day. I did not rest. The work was hard, but I got better. I made fewer mistakes. The woman still spoke in a sharp voice, but she did not shout as much. One day she said, "You are learning." That was the first good thing she said to me. But life was still hard. We had just enough money for food and rent. I did not buy anything new. I did not go out. My phone was old. My shoes had small holes. My old friends did not call. They forgot me. Or maybe they did not know what to say. Maybe they were just busy with their own lives. I did not blame them, but it still hurt. One evening, I sat in the kitchen with my father. I made tea and gave him a small cookie from the bakery. He took a bite and said, "You used to make cupcakes when you were small." I smiled. I remembered that too. I said, "They were not good." He said, "They were better than this cookie." The next day was Sunday. The bakery was closed. I stayed home. I cleaned the flat, washed clothes, and cooked lunch. Then I saw a small box of flour in the kitchen. I also found sugar and 2 eggs. I thought about what my father said. I thought, maybe I can try again. I used an old bowl. I mixed the flour, sugar, and eggs. I did not have butter, but I used oil. I had no big oven, but I used a small electric one. I made 6 small cupcakes. They looked simple, but the smell was nice. I gave one to my father. He smiled and said, "Still better than the bakery." I gave one to the old woman who lived next door. Her name was Mrs. Green. She was always kind to me. She said, "Did you make this?" I said, "Yes, just today." She said, "It's soft and sweet. Can I buy more next week?" I looked at her. I said, "Buy." She said, "Yes, I have a birthday coming. I want these for my guests." That night, I could not sleep. I thought about her words. Could I really make something and sell it? Could people like my baking? I had no money to start a big shop, but maybe I could make a few cupcakes on weekends. I could try. On Monday, I went back to work at the bakery. I worked hard as always. I saved $5 from my pay. On Saturday, I went to the market. I bought flour, sugar, and eggs again. I made 12 cupcakes that night. I used small paper cups I found at the back of the cupboard. On Sunday morning, I knocked on Mrs. Green's door. She opened it with a smile. I gave her the cupcakes. She paid me $10. I was shocked. She said, "Good work must be paid. Don't forget that." That evening she called me. She said, 3 people at the party liked your cakes. One of them wants to order next week. Can I give them your number?" I said yes. My hands were shaking when I ended the call. I looked at my father. He was drinking tea. I told him what happened. He said, "This is just the start." For the first time in months, I felt excited. It was small. Just cupcakes. But they were mine. I made them. I sold them. I felt proud again. Not because I had money, not because I had rich friends, but because I did something real. With my own hands. My cupcakes were small, but they gave me hope. Every Sunday I made more. I bought better flour. I found cheap paper cups. I used oil instead of butter. People started calling me. They asked for 10 cupcakes, then 15, then 20. I baked at night. I packed them with care. I used simple boxes. I wrote their names on top with a pen. One woman said, "Can you make a chocolate one?" I said, I will try. I looked for a cheap cocoa powder. I tested it. My cupcakes came out dark and soft. I gave her a sample. She said, "Perfect. I'll take 12 next week." I felt proud. Not rich. Not big. But proud. Every dollar I saved went into more baking. I kept working at the bakery in the morning. I baked at home in the evening. My hands were always busy. I was tired, but it was a good kind of tired. My father watched me. He said less, but I saw the look in his eyes. It was soft, warm. One day he said, "You work harder than I ever did at your age." I smiled, but not every day was good. One Sunday, I opened the oven and found my cupcakes burned. I forgot to check the timer. I had 20 minutes. I looked away for just a second. They turned dark and dry. I had no money to buy more ingredients. I sat on the floor and cried. I said, "Why did I do this? I'm not good at anything." But then I remembered my first day at the bakery. I made many mistakes, but I did not stop. So I stood up. I took out the last bit of flour and sugar. I made a smaller batch, just 10 cakes. I called the woman and said, "I can give you 10, not 20. She said, "Okay, thank you for telling me." Another day, someone sent me a message. She said, "Your cupcake was too dry." I did not like it. I felt sad. I wanted to stop, but my father said, "One bad voice does not mean you failed. Keep going." So I did. I started to write a small label for each box. I wrote, "Made by Alina. Thank you." People smiled when they saw it. One woman called and said, "I gave your cake to my child. He loved it. He wants more next week." I said, "Thank you so much." My voice was shaking. One Saturday, I counted my savings. I had $180. It was not much, but it was all mine. My father looked at the money and said, "Do you want to open a small stall?" I said, "Can I?" He said, "Let's go see." We went to a street near the train station. There were many small food stalls. One man was selling tea. One woman sold snacks. A girl sold handmade earrings. I asked a man, "How much for one stall here?" He said, $50 a week. I looked at my father. He said, "Try 1 week." The next Sunday, I stood behind my small table. I put a cloth on it. I placed my cupcakes in a row. I used my best boxes. I wrote the prices on a sign. Small, $1. Big, $2. My hands were shaking. I smiled at people. I said, "Would you like a cupcake?" Some people said no. Some looked and walked away. But one boy came back and said, "I want the pink one." He gave me $1 and ran to his mother. My first customer at the stall. I will never forget him. By afternoon, I sold 12 cupcakes. I made 24, and 12 were left. I gave 2 to a little girl near the tea stall. She smiled and said, "So soft." That made me happy. I packed the rest and went home. My feet hurt. My hands were sticky. But I smiled. I gave my father the small cash bag. He counted the money. He looked at me and said, "You did it." The next week, I sold more. Then more. One woman said, "Can you come to my child's school and sell at the event?" I said yes. I baked all night. My father helped me pack. I sold every single cake that day. After 2 months, the tea seller near my stall said, "You work hard. Your cakes smell sweet." He smiled and gave me a cup of tea. I said, "Thank you. That means a lot." It did. I saved more money. I bought better trays. I bought a second apron. I printed a small sign with my name. It said, "Alina's Cakes." It was just paper, but it made me proud. One day, I opened my old photo album. I saw pictures of myself in big malls, big cars, shiny dresses. I looked happy in the photos, but I remembered how empty I felt. I did not know the meaning of life back then. Now I wore old clothes. I had no gold watch, but I had something better. I had purpose. I had hands that worked. I had people who said, "Your cakes are good." That meant more than anything. My father grew stronger. He walked more. He helped me mix flour. He smiled more. One evening he said, "You did not run from life. You stood up. You worked. I am proud of you, Alina." I looked at him. I said, "You worked for me all your life. Now it's my turn." We did not need a big house. We did not need a big car. We just needed peace. We needed each other. And we had that now. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. More emotional and inspiring stories are coming soon. My name is Elena. I am a widow. I live in a small, cold house in a war-raging country. My husband died in the war 1 year ago. He left me with our baby boy and a heart full of pain. Since then, every day has been a fight. I cook with what little I have. I gather firewood when I can. I speak to no one. The neighbors lost family too. Nobody smiles anymore. One cold evening, I was chopping carrots in the kitchen when I heard the door burst open. I turned around, startled. A man stood there, tall and thin, with dirt on his face and torn clothes. His eyes were wild. He looked like he had not eaten in days. His hands were shaking. My first thought was fear. In his hands, he held a rifle. I dropped the knife and stepped back. I couldn't speak. My heart jumped in my chest. I thought I might scream. But then, something strange happened. The man raised both hands and placed the rifle on the floor. He didn't point it at me. He didn't speak. He just looked at me, tired and scared. I realized then he wasn't here to hurt me. He was running from something. I stared at him for a long moment. My eyes went to the rifle. I pointed at it. I wanted it far away from me. He understood. He picked it up slowly and walked to the corner of the room. He placed it gently on a wooden table near the wall. Then he stepped back. He said in a soft voice, "I mean no harm. Please. Just food." I said nothing, but I did not scream. I could see the truth now. He was a soldier, or at least he used to be, but he had no uniform. He looked like a deserter. My husband had worn a uniform too. He never came back. I hated war. I hated soldiers. But this man looked broken. He had the eyes of someone who had seen too much. I should have told him to leave. I should have said, "Get out." But I didn't. My heart burned with grief. And maybe that pain made room for kindness. I gave him a quiet nod and turned toward the pot on the fire. I added more water and more potatoes. He stood near the door, waiting like a dog who had been kicked too many times. I didn't ask his name. I didn't want to know. I just gave him a bowl and a spoon. He sat on the floor and ate slowly, like he hadn't tasted warm food in days. When he finished, he looked up. "Thank you," he said. His voice was low and hoarse. "Do you have a barn or a shed?" I didn't answer right away. Then I pointed to the back door. "There's a small shed. You can stay there for one night. But tomorrow, you go." He nodded. "I understand." I gave him a blanket. Then I looked through the chest where I kept my husband's old clothes. I handed him a coat, a pair of pants, and a wool shirt. He took them with both hands, like they were something holy. "There's a bucket of hot water in the shed," I said. "Wash before you sleep." He left through the back door. I watched him from the kitchen window. He walked slowly, limping a little. He opened the door of the shed and stepped inside. I saw the candlelight flicker behind the frosted glass. Then I saw him take off his dirty coat. He sat on a stool and washed his face, his arms, and his chest. Then he reached for the clothes I had given him. He put them on slowly. And that's when something happened in my chest. I saw him wear my husband's coat. That same brown coat with a missing button. My heart burned with grief. I turned away from the window and covered my face with my hands. That night, I could not sleep. The wind was cold. I held my baby close to my chest and looked at the dark ceiling. I thought about the man in the shed. I wondered if he was sleeping or still awake, watching the shadows like I was. I felt something strange. Not love, not fear, just a deep, deep sadness. I missed having someone next to me. I missed warmth. I missed another human voice in the dark. After some time, I got out of bed. I picked up the candle and walked to the shed. The floor creaked under my feet. I opened the door slowly. He looked up. surprised. His face was calm, but tired. "I can't sleep," I said. He said nothing. I stepped inside. "It's too cold in the house," I added, though it wasn't true. I sat on the floor beside him and placed the candle on a wooden box. For a long time, we said nothing. I leaned against the wall. My shoulder touched his. He sat still, like a statue. Then, slowly, I placed my hand on his. It was cold. He didn't pull away, but he didn't move either. I looked at his face. He stared at the floor. I leaned my head on his shoulder. My eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to speak. I didn't want comfort. I just wanted not to be alone. My body shook with quiet sobs. I missed my husband. I missed feeling safe. I missed feeling loved. The man stayed still. He didn't move. His face was calm but distant. I thought maybe he didn't understand. Or maybe he was afraid too. But just when I thought he would push me away, he spoke 2 simple sentences. "I'm not a good man," he said, "but I won't hurt you." That was all. But those words stayed with me. I closed my eyes and cried in silence. Not because I believed him, but because I wanted to. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. The next morning, I woke up early. The sky was still dark. I made porridge with the last bit of grain I had. My baby was still sleeping. I placed the bowl on the windowsill and looked toward the shed. The candle was no longer burning, but I saw smoke coming from the chimney. He was still there. I did not know what to do next. I told him he could only stay for 1 night. But where could he go? Soldiers were everywhere now. They were looking for men like him, deserters. If they caught him, they would kill him. And maybe they would hurt me too, just for helping him. I brought him some food and knocked gently on the shed door. He opened it slowly. He looked cleaner now, though still tired. He had shaved with my old knife. He wore my husband's coat, and that made something twist in my stomach. He took the bowl and gave me a small smile. "You didn't have to," he said. I shrugged. "Eat before it gets cold." I turned to go back inside, but he spoke again. "My name is Ivan." I stopped. "I didn't ask." "I know," he said softly, "but I wanted you to know anyway." I went back inside and tried to do chores, but my hands were shaking. I kept thinking about what I was doing. Hiding a man from the army. Feeding him. Giving him shelter. What if someone saw? What if they told? The village was quiet now, but I had heard the stories. Soldiers breaking into homes, taking food, taking people, hurting women. I looked at my baby. He was awake now, kicking gently under the blanket. I picked him up and kissed his cheek. He smiled. For that small moment, the fear disappeared. Later that day, while I was collecting firewood near the shed, Ivan came out. He walked slowly, his steps unsure. "Can I help you?" he asked. I looked at him. He was thin, still limping, but he tried to carry a small bundle of wood. "You should rest," I said. "I've rested enough." We didn't speak after that. We just worked. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel completely alone. That night, he went back to the shed without asking for anything. He didn't come to the house. He didn't knock. He knew his place. And somehow, that made me trust him more. But peace never lasts long in times like these. The next morning, I heard the sound of boots. Many boots. Marching on the road that passed our house. I looked out the window and saw them. Soldiers. 5 of them. Armed. Angry. Their faces were hard. My heart stopped. I ran to the back door and opened it quietly. "Go," I whispered. "Go now." Ivan looked at me. "What's happening?" "Soldiers. Patrol. Looking for men like you." He didn't ask anything else. He grabbed his coat and slipped out the back window of the shed. I rushed back into the house. My hands were shaking. My baby cried. I picked him up and held him close. Then came the knock. Loud. Demanding. I opened the door slowly. One of the soldiers stepped forward. "We're looking for a man," he said. "Tall. Thin. Black hair. Maybe hiding in homes. Have you seen anyone like that?" I shook my head. "Only me and my child live here." Another soldier pushed past him and walked into the house. He didn't ask for permission. He looked around, opening doors, checking corners. My legs felt weak. The third soldier noticed the bowl on the table. "You made food this morning?" he asked. I nodded. "For myself." He walked over and picked up the bowl. He sniffed it, then tasted the last bit left at the bottom. He looked at the others. "Warm," he said. "Someone else ate this." I didn't know what to say. My throat was dry. Then one of them stepped forward and took my baby from my arms. "No!" I shouted. "Please, he's just a child." But they didn't care. They carried him outside and placed him on the frozen ground. He was naked, crying, shivering. I screamed. One of the soldiers looked at me with cold eyes. "Tell us where the man is, or your baby dies." My legs gave out. I fell to my knees. My heart broke in that moment. I couldn't lose my child. I couldn't watch him die. "There's no man," I said. "But I have food hidden in the cellar. Please, just take it. Let my baby live." They dragged me to the cellar door. I opened it and showed them sacks of potatoes, some dried meat, and jars of pickled vegetables. They took everything. They didn't thank me. They didn't speak. I ran back outside and picked up my baby. He was still crying, but he was alive. I wrapped him in a blanket and held him close. One soldier watched us. He didn't look angry like the others. His eyes were softer. He reached into his bag and pulled out a wool coat. He placed it over my baby without saying a word. Then he turned and walked back toward the others. I looked up at him, and for a second, I saw something human, something kind. But it wasn't over. Two of the soldiers stayed behind. They grabbed my arm. "There's more here. You're hiding something else," one of them said. "No, I swear," I cried. "You took everything." "Not everything," he said with a cruel smile. They dragged me back into the house. My baby cried in my arms. I was screaming. I thought it was the end. What they didn't know was that Ivan hadn't run far. He had hidden just beyond the trees. He heard everything. He saw what they did. And he didn't run. Not this time. As the soldiers pulled me inside, the front door slammed open. Ivan stood there, breathing hard, holding an axe in both hands. He didn't wait. He swung once. The first soldier fell. The second turned, pulling out his rifle, but Ivan didn't stop. He hit again, harder. The room was filled with noise, with panic. Blood. Then silence. I stood there, frozen, still holding my baby. Ivan looked at me. His eyes were dark, wild, but full of fire. Then we heard footsteps. One more soldier outside. The one who had given my baby the coat. Ivan grabbed the rifle from the floor. He pointed it at the door, ready to kill again. But when the last soldier entered, he raised his hands. He didn't pull his gun. He looked at the scene, then at me, then at the baby. He dropped his own weapon and stepped back. Ivan lowered the gun. Nobody spoke. For a long moment, we just stood there, breathing, alive. I sat on the floor, holding my baby, my arms still shaking. The fire crackled in the corner, the only sound in the room. The two soldiers lay motionless. Ivan stood near the door, watching the last soldier, the one who had spared us, the one who had not lifted his weapon. For a long time, nobody said a word. The soldier's hands were still in the air. His eyes looked at me, then at Ivan. "I won't say anything," he said, his voice low and unsure. "I didn't come here to kill anyone." Ivan didn't move. He kept the rifle close to his chest. I stood slowly. "He saved my baby," I whispered. "Let him go." Ivan looked at me. I didn't know what he would choose. He had blood on his hands now. There was no going back. But he nodded once. "Leave," he said. "Now." The soldier stepped outside without another word. He walked away, his boots silent in the snow. Ivan dropped the rifle and leaned against the door frame. He looked tired, more than tired, like his body had no more strength left. I took a deep breath. "You can't stay here anymore," I said quietly. "They'll come back. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in a week. But they'll come." He didn't argue. He just looked down. "I know." That night, I packed a small bag with what little food I had left. Bread, some cheese, a jar of beans. I wrapped a scarf around it and gave it to him. "There's a path through the woods," I said. "It leads to the river. Follow it until you see a wooden bridge. After that, I don't know." He looked at the bag in his hands. Then he looked at me. "You saved me," he said. "No," I replied. "You saved me." He didn't sleep in the shed that night. He stayed in the corner of the kitchen near the fire. I didn't ask him to leave. I held my baby in my arms and sat across from him. Sometimes our eyes met, but we didn't speak again. The silence between us said more than words ever could. Before the sun came up, he stood and walked to the door. I followed him outside. The snow had stopped. The sky was gray. Cold wind touched our faces. He turned to me. "If you never see me again," he started, then stopped. "Just know, I wasn't always like this." I didn't answer. I just looked into his eyes, and for the first time, I saw something soft. Not fear, not pain. Just a man trying to carry too much. A man who had no place in the world anymore. He took a step away, then turned back. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver locket. "This was my sister's," he said. "She died last year. I don't have anything else. Please keep it. For your son. Maybe one day he'll want to know this story." I took it from him. It was cold and simple. A circle of metal with no name, no picture, only silence inside. But it felt heavy with meaning. He didn't say goodbye. He just walked into the trees. I stood there for a long time, watching until I couldn't see him anymore. Then I went back inside. Weeks passed. Winter slowly loosened its grip. The snow melted. The ground turned muddy and soft. No more soldiers came. People in the village began to speak again, quietly, cautiously. But still, they spoke. I said nothing to anyone. I told no one about Ivan. I burned the blood-stained cloths. I cleaned the floor. I buried what I could. I didn't want anyone asking questions. At night, I sometimes held the silver locket in my hand. I never opened it. I just held it and remembered. I remembered his voice when he said, "I'm not a good man, but I won't hurt you." I remembered the way he looked at my son, like he had lost something and found it again for a moment. Spring came. The world turned green. The trees grew leaves. The air smelled like wet earth and something new. I planted potatoes again. I boiled soup with whatever I could find. Life went on. It always does. One day, while hanging clothes to dry, I saw a stranger walking along the dirt road. He was older, wearing a heavy coat, with a cart full of tools. He didn't look at me, but something about the way he moved made me pause. He walked like someone who had once carried a rifle, someone who had once been afraid. I never saw Ivan again. I don't know if he lived or died. I don't know if he crossed the river, if he found peace. But I still have the locket. I keep it in a small box, wrapped in cloth, beside my son's old baby shoes. One day when he's older, I will tell him the story. I will say, once, during the worst time of our lives, a man came to our door. He was hungry. He was cold. He was running from war. And even though I was scared, I let him stay. And that choice saved both of us. Because sometimes a stranger walks into your life and you don't know why, and you don't ask. You just make soup. You share fire. You share silence. And for one night, that's enough to keep hope alive. We all go through hard times, but stories like this can help us feel seen. Thank you for watching, and come back for more real moments.